This government meeting is brought to you by Eastworks and our local cable subscribers.
So it is 6:04. I will now call to 14th meeting of the Easthampton Conservation Commission. This meeting is being recorded. I believe everyone's aware that because City Hall is closed, we're holding the meeting entirely remotely this evening. Every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings in real time via technological means. In the event that we're unable to do so, despite best efforts, we will post on the City of Easthampton website an audio or video recording, transcript, or other comprehensive record of proceedings as soon as possible after the meeting. Should an interruption occur in which the online meeting ends abruptly, it will not be restarted, and all agenda items will be automatically continued to the next scheduled meeting. Cassie, are there other housekeeping items you need to go over?
Yeah, just really quickly, like I said before, if it's not your item being addressed currently, then everyone is muted and their cameras are automatically turned off. But once we get to your item, we'll be able to turn those things on for you to use. So it's not a technical issue if you can't do those things right now. But everyone can message me in the chat, which is in the bottom right corner, and you can send me, if you have any concerns or questions, you can send them along. And then otherwise, we'll wait until the chair opens each item up for public comment, and we'll call on you individually. And you can also use the raise hand function there on the bottom along your screen there. That's the quick version, and I will stop sharing my screen now if you want to go on to the first item.
Are there any public concerns, non-agenda items?
I haven't received any. If anyone here is here for something that's not on the agenda, you can use the raised hand function to let us know.
All right, hearing none, we'll move on to public hearings. Our first agenda item is a public hearing for notice of intent filed by Furrow Engineering on behalf of Tasty Top Development, LLC, for a new mixed-use commercial and residential development with associated stormwater management system at 93, 95, and 97 Northampton Street, map 128, lot 112, 113, and 114. This is Mass DEP file number 1510322. And I believe we have both representatives from the applicant here this evening, as well as a representative from our peer reviewer. Is that correct? Would those parties please introduce yourselves for the record?
I'm Matt from, go ahead, Matthew. I'm Matt Cody from Beals and Thomas. We were the peer review engineer on behalf of the commission for this project.
Thank you.
I'm Luke Showalter with Furrow Engineering, here representing the applicant, Tasty Top Development.
Great, thank you. So we'd asked Beals and Thomas to be with us this evening to kind of walk us through the points of their review. I believe at this point you have done a primary review, received responses from the applicant, and then responded to those as well, and we have that letter in hand. If you could walk us through that, paying particular attention to changes that you saw between the reviews that have addressed some of your concerns, and then outstanding concerns, that would be helpful.
Sure. So as you know, we issued a letter on June 7th, or July 7th, I should say. And then most recently on August 9th, which was our supplemental review. Over the course of those two letters, a lot of the things regarding our stormwater comments and different things have been resolved. But I can quickly, I guess, summarize where we stand on some of the outstanding items. One thing was that the existing conditions plans are usually stamped by a PLS, which is a professional land surveyor, when we're getting into property lines and different things, as opposed to a professional engineer. So we'd just like to see that endorsement on that plan added. Another thing is some of the things down at the stream crossing. We had some questions about the calculations down there. Pretty straightforward, just looking for some clarification. And also regarding the use of that existing bridge that's there for construction traffic in the interim. We're again looking for some clarification on the applicant, from the applicant on that. Where they're gonna have some steeper slopes, they've indicated that some erosion control blankets and different measures are gonna be incorporated. There are no details of those or kind of more specifics on the plans for that. So we asked again that some of those that information be added. A couple waivers that they're requesting The typical DEP standard is for an infiltration basin to have 2 feet of vertical separation to groundwater. The town has a local bylaw that requires 3 feet. So the applicant's requesting a waiver from that. So something for the commission to consider. Also, that the basin slopes, they're looking for something to do a little steeper. Typically, I think your regulation's 4-to-1. They're looking to do 3-to-1. So again, a waiver that they're going to be requesting for your consideration. And then still just going through some other things, whether it's some of the impervious area calcs or adding some more dimensions or more information on the plans about the membranes that they're suggesting on some of the infiltration basins to meet those requirements. Again, some clarification of the water quality calcs, some clarifications on the mounding calcs. But again, a lot of progress has been made. Again, we're just still looking to look for some additional clarifications on a lot of those items. Also, there are some conditions that are being proposed as well, or again, for your consideration, if the project does move forward. Again, some monitoring down at the stream crossing, the restriction of hazardous materials on site, and then obviously the submittal and adherence to a SWIP once we get a little closer to construction, if that does take place. So that's just kind of a quick shot of where we stand. Again, I think a lot of progress has been made, but we still do think there's a little work to be done. But I'm obviously here and available for any questions if there are any.
Thank you. And Luke, do you want to give an overview of the changes that have been made on your side since we put the project out to peer review?
Yeah, do you want me to go over the changes that were made that I presented at the last meeting as well as a result of the planning board, or are you just talking about from the first peer review by Beals and Thomas? Just clarifying what you want me to go over.
I think if you could go over both. I think we didn't have everyone here last time, so it might be helpful just to do a quick recap.
Sure. Just give me 1 second. So yeah, there was some plan changes, some pretty significant plan changes as a result of going through the planning board process. So I'll give an overview of that first. First off, we removed 13,600 square feet of retail space from building 14. Would it be helpful if I shared my screen and showed the plan?
Yes, it would.
Let's see if this works. Can everybody see that?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so as I was saying, we removed 13,600 square feet of retail space from building 14, which is this building over here. This eliminated the need for the truck loading area that was located behind the building. So that space was converted to green space, which includes grass lawn and some additional trees. We also removed one of the residential buildings entirely. So the building that was back here in this area was removed completely, as well as all associated paved areas, including the driveway, the parking, and the walkways. It also eliminated the need for the stormwater basin that was back there as well. And since this was one of the areas that would have had needed to be cleared for development, Eliminating this building contributed to the reduction of tree clearing by 1.3 acres. So that's 1.3 less acres will need to be cleared. Although we removed a residential building, the number of proposed residential units for the entire project didn't change. Half the units will replace the retail space that was removed from building 14. The other half will be added to the proposed, one of the proposed residential buildings over in this area on the eastern side of the project. As you can see, the footprint increased on that building accordingly. The 3 residential buildings to the east were moved. These 3 buildings here were moved 10 to 15 feet further away from the adjacent slopes. Also, initially, there were 2 restaurant pad sites proposed on Northampton Street, two 5,500 square foot pad sites. And now one of those sites, the northern site, is now proposed to be a 3,200 square foot bank use. So there was a reduction in retail space there as well. So just to recap, the major changes and the impact that they'll have to the project. Tree clearing was reduced by 1.3 acres. That's 23% less tree clearing than what was initially proposed. On top of this, about approximately 200 trees are proposed to be planted throughout the site as part of the development. And also impervious area on site was reduced by over half an acre, about 25,000 square feet. So those were all the changes that were made over a month ago. As a result of the peer review, in general, there was no significant changes to the plans or the stormwater management system. The only change of note would be that the basin R1 was reduced in size. I'll pull up that one. This basin over here, it was reduced in size in order to be able to move it further away from the adjacent slopes. So that's the only major or change of note. I wouldn't call it major, but it also reduced the amount of tree clearing necessary in that area by 5,000 square feet, which isn't too significant, but it's something. As Matt mentioned, we received a second round of comments from Beals and Thomas late last week. A majority of the initial comments they had seem to be addressed by us. We have reviewed their remaining comments, and we believe them all to be addressable without any substantive changes to the plans. So we're currently working on putting together a response, and we anticipate having all their comments addressed within the next week, hopefully.
Thank you. I had some specific questions looking at the most recent August 9th letter. Comment number 2 deals with the Manhan River being a cold water fishery resource and the critical areas criteria. And it's noted that the applicant's response and revisions meet the requirement of DEP Stormwater Standard 6. Can either of you please clarify what the revisions were that addressed that?
That standard has specific pre-treatment. I believe, I don't know, I guess going, I mean, obviously the project has had a couple iterations. If that was an initial comment, I think in the most recent stormwater, they have the required pre-treatment before they're infiltrating. I guess we had always seen that. So I guess the initial nature of the comment from DEP, kind of unsure what they were looking for. But I guess in our opinion, They're meeting that standard 6 with their current design.
Okay, so there was no change.
Not a substantial one that I'm aware of, no.
Okay.
Once we got involved, like I don't know if there was a change, to a previous iteration, but like since we've been involved, it seems like it's been compliant.
Okay. On comment number 4 regarding the tree line perimeter sediment controls, your initial comment, Matt, said that Fields and Thomas could not accurately evaluate the proposed impacts to resource areas and buffer zones, and were holding further comment on impacts until additional information was provided. Did you have further comments once that revision was made to show the limit of work and perimeter sediment controls?
No, we're all set with that now. I guess just the limits the initial limits were unclear, and now the limits are more greatly defined. We're comfortable with it.
Okay. I appreciated your comment 6 regarding how the resource area impacts would be avoided during installation of bridge footings. The commission has had the same question, and I appreciate your recommendation that monitoring be required during that work. There's a few comments, I think, that deal with the bank full width, and it's a little bit hard to follow. Can someone please walk us through the discussion and where we finally arrived on that issue?
So I think there's just the distances that they list don't appear to adhere to if they don't match up with the plans directly. We're not talking. There's not a huge bust. We're talking about inches, but they don't match. And we were just looking for some clarification to just to get everything matching, so that we're talking apples to apples when we're doing it. So again, I believe that's probably something that's readily fixed. It's just in the last iteration it was not.
Okay. And I assume there's no response yet, Luke, regarding the ability of that temporary bridge to support construction vehicles in its current state?
The temporary bridge you were talking about?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, it's only anticipated to, it's not anticipated to receive any heavy construction equipment. At most, a mini excavator or a pickup truck. But if you need additional information on the capacity of it, we can do provide some more analysis if needed.
Wasn't the reason you were requesting to leave it in place that you needed it for construction equipment access?
Right, and the only construction equipment that would be used would be for construction of the new crossing would be a mini excavator or because of the sensitivity of that area, a mini excavator mainly would be used to excavate the footings, and then maybe a pickup truck would cross to bring materials over to the other side. But anything above, there wouldn't be any other heavy equipment used in the construction of that crossing.
And that would be sufficient to install the sheet piling as well?
That wouldn't need, a crane would probably be used for that, and that wouldn't need to cross the crossing.
So you do all of that from the, what would that be, the west side?
End. Correct.
Okay. Matt, could you please speak a little bit more to your review of the requirements to require use of low impact design, site planning strategies, and how you interpreted that and what you saw relative to the project?
Yep. So for the most part, the drainage system they're proposing is just kind of your standard, piped system. But with every residential building, there is a rain garden that they're proposing for the roof capture on that. And, that's an obvious, those rain gardens are LID measures. The infiltration basins in themselves are LID measures. I think two of the five or two of the six, the number might be off now. They've removed one. Are infiltration. They don't have a lot of great soils on the site for infiltration. So they couldn't make them all infiltration basins, but where they are able to readily, they're doing so. So between those infiltration basins and the rain gardens at all the residential buildings, which there are a number of them, we felt they were making a legitimate effort to meet that requirement in that request.
And in your review, were you satisfied with the level of characterization of soils in accordance to the Mass Stormwater Handbook?
Yes. Yeah, no, there's quite a few different rounds of test pits done over the years at the site. All the logs have been provided. It seems like the due diligence on that end has been done.
I believe there was a note somewhere that the seasonal groundwater elevation had not been recorded by a soil evaluator. Is that still a concern?
No, I believe because the ones that weren't done by a soil evaluator, I think, are ones that are kind of away from where we're concerned about. And then the most recent ones we received as part of the last round were. So I think we're comfortable with that.
Okay. Comment 12 deals with the erosion and exposed tree roots observed already on site, and erosion is a significant concern in Easthampton and our slopes in general because of our soils, but also has been a specific concern brought up by a number of people during the course of review of this project. Can you speak a bit more to whether you feel that the current design adequately protects those slopes, or if there are still areas of concern?
Well, yeah. As we know, or as the applicant notes, like they are going to incorporate mitigation and blankets and different things where they have some steeper slopes, and we just don't have that detail yet. So we've requested they provide that additional detail. As they know, a lot of the visual erosion that you can see out there now is on the slopes and kind of away from where they'll be disturbing. But again, with the addition of the blankets and different things that they're going to be disturbing, we would hope those concerns would be mitigated. But again, we're looking for that additional information before we'd be completely satisfied.
Okay. I think those were all of my immediate questions. Did other commissioners have questions?
Yeah, I would say though they do seem to.
So I'm not sure if it's me or if others are having a hard time hearing that.
Yeah, sorry, could you repeat that? I didn't hear it as well, Matt, whatever you last said.
Oh no, I was saying though they do seem to be, as the applicant indicated, though there is kind of a decent number of things that remain outstanding. We don't see any of them as like deal breakers or anything like that. There are things that all can be readily addressed. It's just a matter of getting to that point.
Great, thank you. Do other commissioners have questions at this point? I'm not sure how much time everyone has had to review the letter.
I had I had one question, something that we've been talking about a little bit over different different meetings, and I just happened to be looking through the current drawing set. At one point, there were like overflow type things on the stormwater basin for extreme high flow events, but I don't. And so I was thinking about the stormwater ordinance and the need for easements for conveyance from those areas if it went into other properties. But I don't see overflows on the current drawings that I was just looking through. And maybe I'm mistaken on either way, but do the stormwater basins retain a 100-year storm event? Or has there been a design change that changed whether or not there were those overflows in any of these? And it may not have been in this revision, it may have been previous revisions that I just didn't notice the change. But I wonder if you could comment on that.
Yeah, I can speak to that. So earlier in the process, there was some concern about the riprap spillways on the basin embankments adjacent to the slopes, and whether if there was an emergency spill, there was concern that there would be erosion down the embankment. So what we had done was we took the outlet control structure and we put weir overflows into it at the 100-year storm event line where the water would get up to. So to answer your question, yes, the basins are designed to hold the 100-year storm event with 1 foot of freeboard above that. But the ones adjacent to the steeper slopes were designed with weirs within the outlet structures to capture any to discharge any water over the 100-year storm event, and then direct it down the slope to the level spreaders piped down the slope. One of Fields and Thomas's comments was that they didn't believe that they believed that a spillway, emergency spillway on the embankment was required or needed or necessary. So we will look into that and how to design the spillway so that the water is safely discharged down the slope and directed to a level spreader on the slope so that erosion is prevented. And we will have a response to that in the next response letter.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and I guess just to further clarify that, like I said, like when you have this outlet control structure, and that's also going to act as your emergency spillway. If that structure gets somehow compromised, clogged, something, it just seems a little counterintuitive that also to be relied upon as your emergency spillway. You'd be having an emergency when that structure is not working. So to have it kind of a dual use seems like we're just looking for some further clarification on that. If there is an aversion to having these spillways that are going to spill down this slope, I mean, it certainly is an alternative, but we were just concerned about how, the kind of dual use nature of those structures and how that might, work out.
Thank you.
Sure.
Further question or comment from the commission?
I have a comment from Commissioner Carr in the chat that she doesn't have any questions right now, but she'd like to review further.
Understood, and I suspect that's the case for several of us.
And I have a quick question, which maybe comes with the next iteration. But in 2 comments, Beal and Thomas encouraged the applicant to request a formal waiver from the commission for what it was that they were recommending doing. And is this the time to discuss that, or is that something which comes in the next iteration of comment response?
I would assume that would be something that would need to be submitted formally in writing, but that the applicant may want to make their additional adjustments before pursuing that.
Okay, fair enough.
it would be nice to try to get some more low impact development measures into the project somehow, like permeable pavement or that kind of thing. But you know, that's just something that I've been thinking about.
I agree, Dan. I'm not sure that we've fully met the spirit and intent of the ordinance at this point.
I agree as well. I was curious, and this may not be relevant to our purview for the Conservation Commission, but I was curious, Luke, if you, when you presented the changes that you made in response to the planning board, if any of those were in response to environmental or watershed issues that, or if they were in response to just other building design things that aren't relevant here.
Yeah, I mean, the removal of the residential building in the back area was kind of a decision by the applicant, just based on all the community feedback and the feedback from the planning and the Conservation Commission. Just that, and just reducing the impact of the project in that area near the stream there, and reducing the amount of impervious. So that was a consideration in that change.
I guess I'm curious, given the amount of public comments that there have been about concerns about erosion and water going into people's basements, etc., if there are any other, if there's any other thinking going on by the applicant about possible other proposed offerings that the applicant might make that would address the spirit of those comments, even if they're not technically requirable by us.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely understand the concern by neighbors, and and concern about more water and more impervious area in the area, and not wanting more water in their basements and more flooding. But I do believe that the stormwater management system, as designed, has met all the stormwater standards that were put into place to prevent that from happening. The peak runoff rates are less than the pre-development peak runoff rates, which means there'll be less runoff at the peak times. We've directed the water to where it currently goes naturally now. I believe that I understand that the concerns are definitely legit, but I believe that we have designed the project in a way that will prevent any of those things from happening.
I think I was thinking more of things that, like the stormwater system, we as a commission we are required to make sure that it will do that, the things that you said. But there are other things that are outside of our purview, but that there's been lots of public comments about, like the effects on the wilderness corridor and on the Manhattan River. And I'm just curious, since it sounds like the applicant made an effort to make some offerings already to address some of the spirit of those comments, as you said. I'm just curious if there's any thought to making any other offerings in that direction that would address that spirit any further.
I believe the applicant has offered everything he was hoping to offer. If there's anything requests, I'm sure he's open to hearing it. But we believe that the changes that have been made were in response to those concerns.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question. Number 11, under the stormwater management review comments, it talks about how a large area is undevelopable with regard to the regulations, but it appears that the majority of remaining upland areas will be impacted by the development. But the applicant is committed to preserving 3 existing trees along Northampton Street frontage, and you're suggesting you request that the applicant explore additional opportunities to maintain existing mature vegetation and open spaces in the upland areas. If there's something you can tell us other than the 3 trees, how you can expand to maintain the existing mature vegetation and open space in those areas. It's under number 11.
Yeah, in regards to preserving trees along the frontage, really there's only not many trees along the frontage currently. You know, it's currently a paved area. It was a house and a barn area, then the old Tasty Top Creamery. So those 3 trees are the main trees on that frontage, and they are proposed to be saved. You know, again, the removal of the residential building and all its associated parking and driveway, that reduces the tree clearing by 1.3 acres. So we believe that's pretty significant. So there definitely has been steps taken to try to reduce the tree clearing.
So can you explore what the peer reviewer is requesting? Additional opportunities to maintain the existing mature vegetation? Or you're just saying the 3 trees?
Well, I'm saying there's no other trees to save along the frontage because it's all currently cleared already. We are planting additional trees along the frontage, as can be seen in the landscaping plan. So there will be actually more trees post-development in that area than are currently.
Could I ask Mr. Cody if you could explain what you're trying to request of the applicant?
Just so as they're clearing, like, so obviously, like I said, like a lot of the upland areas are where they're proposing to work, because that's obviously they have to stay out of the buffer zones, etc. If there were opportunities, you know, it might be, you know, building by building basis to save a tree or 2 up in those areas as they're putting these buildings in. I guess that's more where we're aiming towards, instead of just clear cutting those areas entirely. You know, in between buildings, or you know, in between the proposed buildings or foundations are going to be, you know, not going to be. If they could leave a tree or 2, depending on how that worked out, that'd be great. Sometimes logistically, just like the construction, you know, they're going to end up getting damaged or, you know, impacted anyways. So maybe they're not salvageable. It was just something we, you know, requested that they maybe look at as they're, you know, thinking about how the trees up in those areas will be cleared.
Okay, thank you.
This might be premature, but I know in the past the commission has required something similar to what Matt just described, but only around the limit of work, in that any tree along the limit of work that is above a certain DBH should be marked before removal to see if the limit of work can just be shifted slightly to preserve that tree. I don't have the specifics. I have to look at what we've done in the past, but I think we did do that for Loudville, 6973 Loudville Road, a main project, and surely at least one other more. I can't think. That's a condition, so might be getting ahead of ourselves to mention it, but just something potentially to keep in the commission's mind.
Thanks, Cassie. Other comments from the commission? Or I'd like to open it up to public comments and questions at this point.
Deb, did you have something else you were just about to say?
I just had questions on the planting list, but I can wait till after we're done with the peer review. If that's...
Go ahead, Deb.
Oh, you want me to ask? Okay.
Mhm.
So with the new site planting list, I have several questions, but just two for right now. One is, you added to the site planting list 4-inch layer of 1.5-inch crushed stone. Can you clarify what that is for and where you were planning on placing stone?
Yeah, I'll just share my screen again and pull up that plan so everybody can know what we're talking about. So this change was in response to one of the Beals and Thomas comments. It's only in the area of the bottom of the infiltration basins. And I believe it was to aid in infiltration. But it's a 4-inch layer of 1.5-inch crushed stone. This is that hatch. This is what it looks like. So on the plan, that crushed stone is located in this infiltration, just the bottom area of it, that basin, as well as over here in this basin. So the two it just covers the bottom of the two infiltration basins.
So that's the only area that you're placing crushed stone.
Correct. Yes.
You're suggesting that in lieu of planting?
That previously that was grassed area. So the crushed stone is, Beals and Thomas suggested that it should be crushed stone. So that's why we made that change. So that it's replacing the grassed area that at the bottom of the basins. Yes.
Was that the intent, Matt, or were you suggesting that that should be a layer underneath the soil media and plantings?
Yeah, I'm not off the top of my head, I'm not recalling making that comment. Trying to buzz through these quickly here. I mean, typically what we see in these basins is it is hard to get vegetation to establish. So the fact that they could have a stone base could be beneficial instead of it always kind of being mucky. It would be something that would be more stable.
So it was actually in response is a question, comment 15A, and it was out of the Easthampton ordinance.
So that, yeah, okay, so yeah, so that's not necessarily a comment, like, or not necessarily a suggestion we made. It was keeping in line with your ordinance. Or with clean stone or filter fabric. So usually, so there in a layer of like ground fabric or stone. They chose to go with stone.
Typically, though, that would be. Go ahead, Dan.
I said, who wrote that ordinance? And then John.
Probably you.
Parsons.
When I've seen similar designs, though, I mean, certainly if you chose filter fabric, it wouldn't be on the surface. It would be a layer underneath. And I assume that the same was intended for the stone, not that it would be the finished surface, but that it would be a layer to allow for increased infiltration and pore space underneath the finished surface.
We're happy to look into changing that.
Can I ask the second question?
Please.
Okay, so you did change out some trees. I'm going to save that for another meeting. My second question is key letter H. You have you switched out the tufted grasses, which we thought could have been invasive, and you replaced it with blue joint grass. But the botanical name belongs to big blue stem grass, and the common name belongs to a separate botanical name. So are you doing the big blue stem, which is Andropogon gerardi, or are you doing blue joint grass, which is Calamagrostis canadensis? You have two different types in the one line. So which will you be using?
So this is another species straight out of the Mass DEP Stormwater Handbook. It calls out that botanical name and blue joint. Maybe it's a mistake. I can look further into it, and I would imagine it's the botanical name. But we chose this one specifically because it was native. It has higher salt tolerances, and it's good for wildlife. But I can clarify that and get back to you.
So you'll let us know if it's the big blue stem or if it's the blue joint?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. That was it for my questions.
Okay, thanks, Deb. With that, I'll open it to questions or comments from the public.
Yeah, and if folks, just as a reminder, if anyone does want to make a comment, at the bottom of your screen, there should be a button that looks like a hand. You can click that, you in a queue, perfect. And then we'll do each person in order. So what I'll do, Marty, I saw your hand on there. I'm going to make it so that you can speak and turn on your camera here in a second. Okay, Marty, you're good to go whenever you're ready.
I had a couple of comments. The first one is for the commission and for the peer reviewer. I'm just wondering, how common is it for rain gardens to be capturing water that comes off roofs, as opposed to what I believe is the more common application of capturing runoff from impervious surfaces? It just feels kind of disingenuous to me, and kind of a greenwashing attempt to, get the LID certification. But I would like to know, how common is this use in your experience? And that's my first one. Thank you.
I would say, Marty, that it's fairly common. One of the benefits of capturing runoff from roofs is that it tends to be clean, and so you don't end up clogging up your practices as much, but you're still able to do infiltration, which is an excellent benefit. And certainly if that runoff were not going into the rain garden, it might be making its way across lawns or sidewalks into the stormwater system. So it certainly can have a significant benefit. And it's a common LID practice to encourage disconnection of downspouts and routing them to places where they will infiltrate.
Thank you. And also about the rain gardens. So my understanding is that, and I believe this may have been in response to earlier comments by Councillor Zaret regarding pollinating plants. I believe the plan is to put in native flowering plants into those rain gardens. And I would just like to know, what are the plans for maintaining those? Because I have limited experience with rain gardens, but the ones that I've seen get overrun with weeds in a couple of years. So if the intent is to have native flowering plants there, how is that going to be maintained?
I'll let the applicant field that.
Yeah, so the maintenance of the rain gardens is outlined in the operation and maintenance section of the stormwater management report. So I'll refer to that. But that goes into detail on how to maintain rain gardens and, and then the applicant signs off on, or the future owner signs off on adhering to all those maintenance and operation and maintenance items.
And the future owner in this case, we've been told, will be the applicant. Is that still the case?
Correct.
And can you give us a summary of what rain garden maintenance is proposed?
Yes, I'll pull it up real quick. So a lot of these maintenance procedures are also out of the Mass DEP, are recommended by the Mass DEP regulations in the stormwater handbook. But I'll just list some maintenance items. Inspect soil and repair eroded areas monthly. Remulch void areas as needed. Replace mulch every 2 years in the early spring. Remove litter and debris monthly. Treat disease vegetation as needed. Remove and replace dead vegetation twice per year in the spring and in the fall. Remove invasive species as needed to prevent spreading into the rain garden. Never store snow in or around rain garden to avoid salt contamination. And then there's also a rain garden maintenance schedule in table format in here as well. So the applicant is required to follow all those maintenance items for the rain gardens to ensure that they're in working order.
Further questions, Marty?
I had a question about tree planting. So my understanding is that the main tree species that are going to be planted are red maple and some type of hawthorn. Red maple is salt intolerant, and hawthorns have big thorns. I'm wondering why there aren't some tree species that are endemic to our area, and that area in particular, such as sycamore, boxwood, box elder, maybe a few others that I can't think of right now, but I think there should be an effort to plant appropriate trees when trees are really being planted there.
So all the trees that are being planted for this development are native trees, and in accordance with Mass DEP recommendations, these red maples have a high salt tolerance, and the Alca honey locust is a species of thornless honey locust, so there will be no thorns.
Are there additional public questions at this time, Cassie?
Marty, unless, do you have any more? Or
No, not this time.
okay, thank you. Yeah, if anybody else has any other comments they'd like to make, you can use the raise hand function to let me know. I also received, I'm seeing an email from Robert Parent. If I can read that one while we're waiting to see if anyone else raises their hand.
That'd be great.
Okay, the subject line of the email is an alternative to waiving groundwater separation at SVC. This is received at 6:18 p.m. tonight. The message is, won't be able to speak this evening. I'm mowing my grass and listening to the meeting, but the applicant should consider the use of permeable paving in lieu of infiltration basins. A benefit of this would be freeing up site areas for open space.
Thanks, Cassie.
And I'm not seeing any other raised hands at this time. Members of the public, looks like the majority of folks here may likely be for other items as well that are on the agenda.
Okay, great. So as one of the commissioners had noted earlier, several of us would like more time to review the most recent round of revisions and comments. So we'll certainly be doing that. I know that I am not going to be present for the next meeting. Am I remembering that there was someone else on the commission who wouldn't be available for the next meeting?
I may have travel plans during that period of time. It's not confirmed yet, but I do have a concern that I may not be available.
Okay. So I wonder if it might make sense to, if the applicant is amenable to skip over the next meeting and reconvene. I don't know what the date would be after that.
It'd be September 11th.
Thank you.
Looks like Luke might be frozen.
Sorry, so September 11th would be the next meeting date that where everybody will be present.
It looks like that right now.
I believe so. Is that accurate from the commission?
Okay. Yeah, that we'll have to make that work then.
Okay. Then if there are no further comments or questions at this time, do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion that we continue to.
Oh, sorry, Cassie.
There was a question if the commission wanted to enter into another contract with Beals and Thomas. As we've reached the attendance of this meeting and the completion of those two reviews gets us to the end of the scope that we have originally entered a new contract with Beals and Thomas with. So I guess the real question is, does the commission want to enter into a new contract with Beals and Thomas for another review of what we're assuming will be the next response by the applicant? And then they also offered up, if the applicant is interested, is a meeting of just the applicant and Beals and Thomas to help expedite things at the next meeting to make sure that they have responded to everything in a way. Everything would still be reviewed at the next meeting. It would just be like an informational bonus session, I guess you could say.
Comments or thoughts from the commission?
Well, I think this is a huge project, and I think this peer review is very important.
Agreed.
I'm wondering, so the project's going through the MEPA process right now. I'm wondering if it would make sense if Beals and Thomas could look at, once the MEPA certificate comes out, look at the project relative to this, and if that would be the next point at which it would make sense to, I don't know. I'm just spitballing, because it's just, it'd be nice just to make sure that like everything is, all consistent and, makes sense. And that probably shouldn't be that long from now, I would think.
I'm not sure what the timeline is, but that's a good thought, Dan, because we do anticipate that there could be some suggestions for changes that come out of that process since they're taking a broader view.
Or even just like nothing came out that affects I don't know, something, whatever it is, whatever the outcome is.
Right.
Yep.
So that would suggest then that we do kind of ask Beals and Thomas to hold, but that we do anticipate having them look at things again. We're just not exactly sure when that might be. Does that sound about right?
I think that's right. Yes.
Matt, if you're still on, is that amenable to Beals and Thomas?
Yes, no, that's fine. And we're obviously available to assist whenever needed. It's just as Cassie mentioned, we're just kind of at the end of our, initial budget and scope. So if
Right.
if additional things come up or we're certainly available and willing to do that. It's just, we'd have to, work out a budget amendment or, a different contract, et cetera. But no, that's fine.
Understood. Okay. So we can start to put together a scope and timeline as we know more and get that information over to you and obviously over to the applicant as well. I think that sounds like a good plan.
Nope, that's great. Thank you.
Cassie, anything else?
No, I can start working on the new scope for them to consider and that you guys will be able to look at too before sending it off.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, that was the last for me.
Great. Then I'll return to my request for a motion.
I'll make a motion that we continue this to September 11th at 6 p.m.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Roll call vote. Let's see if I can do this without seeing you all. Buttrick,
Aye.
August,
Aye.
Weeks,
Aye.
Whittemore,
Aye.
Ryan,
Aye.
Aye.
Carr. Did I get everybody? Motion carries. Thank you.
I think so.
Thank you.
Having been chair for the last meeting, I can't appreciate how hard it is to be staring directly at somebody and being like, I've known this person for a long
I
time.
don't know their name right
I know
now.
their name. It's not coming to me at this exact second.
Yeah, I've got the benefit of having your names written there for the people that are on my screen tonight, so that's helpful. I just can't see the ones who aren't
True.
visible. All right. Thank you very much, Matt
Thank you all.
and Luke, for your time.
Thank
No
you.
problem. Thank you.
Yep. Good night.
All right, our next order of business is a public hearing for a notice of intent filed by R. Levesque Associates, Inc. on behalf of One Industrial Lofts, LLC for Track 2 of Mixed Commercial Residential Mill Redevelopment Project with Associated Stormwater Management System at 1 Ferry Street, Map 135, Lot 2. Request filed on 7/6/2023. Cassie, do we have a DEP file number for this project?
We do. It's
Okay.
1510324. Ryan, correct me if I'm wrong.
I don't know off the top of my head, but I can check for you.
I know, I do have it too.
While Ryan's looking that up for everyone's benefit, this may sound familiar. We had previously permitted this project. This is the second phase of the Ferry Street Mills redevelopment. And there were some changes proposed and the applicant chose to resubmit their NOI because the changes were sufficiently substantial. So that is why we are talking about this again.
Yes, that's correct. Thanks, Julie. For the record, Ryan Nelson from R. Levesque Associates. Cassie, the DEP file number, I believe you're correct, 151-0324.
Nice. Thank you.
I'm going to attempt to share my screen.
So we did look at this last time, but it just didn't have a DP file number yet.
Apologies.
Some things. No problem.
I was not here last time.
Okay. So as Julie said, Ferry Street Mills, this is the east side referred to as Track 2. Track 1 has been completed and we got a certificate of compliance for that a month or two ago. So for Track 2, we were proposing the demolition of the existing building along the canal. There's also a lot of debris on site and various stockpiles of material that's going to be removed. Before I go on, sorry, there's as everyone knows, a canal that bisects the site. This would be Track 1, the west side, and Track 2, the east side. So previously, under the last notice of intent, we were proposing to replace the building or to rehab the building along the canal, but that's no longer the case. The plans have changed. The building along the canal will be demoed and a new building, 75 to 100 unit residential building will be constructed farther to the east on site. And the way that's going to work is If we look at the grading sheet here, the entrance from Ferry Street will slope down. You can see these proposed grade contours. They're sloping down along the building and then wrapping around to the canal side of the building where there will be parking available as well as parking underneath the building. Due to the elevation changes on site, there's a couple sets of retaining walls that are proposed. There's a retaining wall located along this eastern edge of the parking, and that's going to provide for a pedestrian path to connect Ferry Street to the existing bike trail at the rear of the site. So this is going to be an elevated but still sloping path above the parking or drive aisle that's going to connect Ferry Street to the bike trail. And then we also have retaining walls proposed over here between the lower tier parking area and the front entrance. We are utilizing a very similar stormwater management system to the previous proposal. Stormwater will sheet flow across these parking areas. It's graded to a gutter line along the curb alongside the building and collected at catch basins and various low points on the site. All of those catch basins will convey stormwater via subsurface piping to a proposed water quality unit, a Contact hydrodynamic water separator in this location, and then utilizing an existing outfall at the canal. One of the DEP comments was, does this meet stormwater standard 5? And our answer was yes. We are in a zone 2 wellhead protection district. So we are accounting for those design standards for the stormwater system. But primarily not much has changed in terms of our design point and the intent and how we're treating stormwater on the site. Jurisdiction wise, we are within the buffer zone to the canal. I don't know if you can see on this sheet. Let me try and find the sheet that has it. I'm not sure if it's apparent, but it's on here somewhere. But the 100-foot buffer zone, oh, here it is right here. This label right here, 100-foot buffer is this line. So it pretty much goes down through the middle of the track 2 site. So the proposed building partially is located within the buffer zone, and then the parking area to the west is in the buffer zone, and this side of the property would be out of the buffer zone. The site is also within bordering land subject to flooding. I believe the elevation, I think it's 122.3, but I can confirm. Yep. 100-year flood zone elevation on the 88 datum is 122.3. And similar to the previous proposal, we are taking account or credit for the removal of the existing building, since that was in existence well before the FEMA flood study. And due to the grading on the site, we are proposing a cut to existing grade on the majority of the drive aisle and especially the wraparound of the back, in addition to the drive underneath of the building that's going to be open, so floodwaters could enter that. We're creating a net surplus of comp storage on site. So not a whole lot of changes in terms of how much we're developing or flood zone impacts or buffer zone impacts, just a different reconfiguration of a proposed building and where the parking on site will be. So happy to answer any questions you guys might have.
So last meeting, the one question that I remember walking away with that we kind of talked about was, right now there's the 2 buildings close up against the canal, and moving the building away will increase sun penetration down to the canal somewhat. And so we're just wondering if there could be a way to squeeze some trees in along the canal edge, recognizing that there's really not much space at all with the way everything has to lay out there.
Right. No, that's a good question.
Yep.
That was one of the comments we addressed. Cassie had sent over a few weeks ago,
Yep.
and I'll read RLA's response to that. Cassie's comment to us: consider and speak to the possibility of adding plantings along the wall of the canal that will be newly exposed to try to offset the loss of shading to the canal water from the building removed. Either propose some plantings or explain why this is not feasible. RLA's response: the canal is incised approximately 15 feet below existing grade, and some shading will still exist under proposed conditions. The anticipated increased sunlight exposure of the canal due to the removal of the existing building will be mitigated by the construction of a proposed multi-story building, which will be shifted approximately 70 feet directly to the east. The canal goes through a historic mill complex, and the canal is concrete and does not contain a natural substrate. Therefore, efforts to provide shading are not anticipated to have the same benefits as compared to a natural stream corridor. Additionally, proposed tree plantings along the top of the canal wall pose risk of long-term structural damage through their roots, exploitation of potential cracks and voids in the existing wall, and proposed sidewalks. In lieu of planting trees, the applicant has proposed to install hanging planter baskets along the top of the canal wall ornamental railing.
Thank you. And you are showing some trees in those little
There's
parking
a
lots.
couple, right, a couple on the parking islands, yes.
Yep, yep.
Why are those trees not a concern relative to the structure of the wall, but others along the canal would be?
We have to meet parking standards, and I believe that's a requirement under typical site plan review for parking.
That didn't answer my question.
Yes, they would propose a risk, but we're trying to minimize the risk by only providing what is necessary to satisfy zoning.
Plus, they're as far away from the wall as possible, it looks like.
Correct.
Is that really 15 feet from that elevation down to the, because it's hard to get that sense for it from looking at the site.
Yeah, the bottom of the canal is like 103.6 or 7, and proposed grade will be 120 point something. So it'll be actually more than 15 feet under proposed conditions.
Mm-hmm. Did we talk about whether repairs or maintenance to the walls are being performed as part of these projects? I don't remember.
Mike, are you available to speak to that?
Yes, the both sides of the interior of the dam of the canal walls will be repaired.
Those are stone masonry walls or concrete walls?
They're granite foundations from the concrete bottom. Obviously, it's probably well below the concrete bottom of the canal. Up about, it varies on each side, but they're probably 10 to 12 feet. And then there's a combination of concrete and brick. Again, that's why we have a detail along the where the ornamental railing will be as well. That'll be like a retaining point, like a grade beam along the sidewalk wall. That'll be part of a monolithic pour that'll go from there and then tie into the canal walls below with rebar and concrete.
And this is not changing really as part of the project, right? The repair of the masonry that was proposed before and is not changing from the original proposal.
Correct.
Yep. Okay.
I believe in the original approvals, we had required some, I forget if it was netting that we landed on, but we had some protections for capturing anything that would fall into the canal. Is that still part of your proposal?
We cannot use netting. That won't work because the idea is because it's a concrete bottom. We're basically going to shut the dam off. We're going to shut the water off so that we can get in there and clean, because there's about 150 years worth of, rubble and brick and steel pipes, and we're going to completely clean everything that's in there now, clean it out.
Is that something that was discussed at the last meeting?
I don't think so.
No, I don't remember discussing that.
I think there was a discussion about cleaning the canal at many meetings ago, cleaning out some of that debris, but I didn't hear about anything about stopping the water and driving in there. That's all.
Yeah, the idea is in the fall, if we can coordinate this correctly, that's when the water is the lowest and the slowest throughout, coming over the dam and in the canal, and that's like the prime time to be able to do that work.
How has that been accounted for in your impacts analysis?
Mike, am I correct in that you have control and ability to control the water level of the dam or the impoundment area?
Correct.
So
we have in our deed, we have drawdown rights, hydroelectric rights, water flow rights, and a handful of other, because we own the majority of the pond, and the other part of the ownership is the city, which is.
Gotcha. Yep. So would you anticipate on a demolition day, you would cease flow, work on demoing the building, and then clean as necessary, and then resume flow? Or are you expecting it to be done in one shot, or how long it would take?
No, I mean, it would take some time. So what we would do is we would either do some sort of a pump system to divert the water around our canal area and basically go around the site and come back in where the bridge area is.
Mm-hmm.
Or we would use an ADS pipe and let the ADS pipe run independently from the dam along the inside of the canal, and then flow out again beyond where the bridge is.
Okay.
And are those temporary impacts to the resource areas currently reflected in your calculation of impacts? Because I don't think anything that dramatic was proposed or approved under the prior NOI.
We haven't, you're referring to impact. I guess I'm just unclear as to what.
Dewatering is considered an impact,
Okay.
regardless of whether it's temporary, and you're proposing to dewater the entire canal, it sounds like.
It's not dewater, it's diverting.
It's dewatering for the purposes of our conversation and permitting process. Just as if you were to draw down the pond to dredge it, that would be dewatering. You'd have dewatering impacts for the entirety of the area of the pond.
Okay, so would the commission be looking for a dewatering plan or flow diversion plan, or just additional detail on that?
We would definitely need to see a water control plan, but you're also going to need, if it's not already in your tally of impacts, to update your impacts, because your assessment of resource impacts is not accurate if you haven't accounted for that.
And there's a lot that raise a lot of questions too, like on the other side of the rail trail, it's all endangered species habitat. So not to, once you get out of the canal to the other side, to change the water flow regime. I just don't know what the species is. I don't know what the other inflow sources are to that area. You know, that would all need to be coordinated.
Right.
Well, we'd still be discharging within the canal, just past the building demolition area.
There's a possibility too. How long is that length of canal?
Maybe, I think the building's what, like 300 something feet, so the canal's probably 400.
You're probably also talking about tripping the 500 linear feet of bank threshold for MIPA by doing this that way.
How are we disturbing bank?
Because if you're dewatering the bank, I think they would consider that temporary impacts to bank. I'd have to think that through more, but I think that's how it has been interpreted in the past.
Yeah, having been forced to go through MIPA several times were things that I did not think would have had MIPA issues with. Anyway.
I think you'd have to, I could be mistaken, but you'd have to look at David Follis's previous assessment on this, because a canal has a whole different, especially with a concrete bottom, is looked at differently.
The fact that it's concrete does not matter. It's still considered land underwater. It's still considered bank. The determination previously made the determination that it would not be considered perennial and would not have a riverfront, but that doesn't change any of the things we're talking about.
I'm trying to remember my discussions with DEP on this a couple years back when this was originally getting permitted. Some of the pathways that DEP suggested were that, I don't have the language right in front of me, but off the top of my head, I remember the way it's worded. If you look at performance standard thresholds for land underwater or bank, if you exceed those thresholds, usually it requires a wildlife habitat analysis unless the commission deems, the resource area is insignificant. So that would be our approach in this circumstance, if that was considered a resource area impact.
That still wouldn't get you around the thresholds that you'd be tripping for MIPA or the need to report them as impacts. We can't change any of that, regardless of whether we think it's significant or not. And frankly, I don't know, particularly because of the downstream habitat issues that Dan mentioned.
Yeah, I guess if you're diverting, if you're just kind of diverting and then discharging, like at the downstream end of the canal, maybe that concern goes away. But that just does raise a lot of questions.
Yeah, this is the changes you're proposing on the surface, I think, are not of significant concern by and large. But this is a significant change that we had not permitted previously or discussed previously.
Okay, so I'm just trying to get a grasp for what the commission is looking for so we can provide more information.
You're going to need to recalculate your resource impacts, thinking carefully about what does and does not apply, and then see if you trip MIPA. If you trip MIPA, you're going to need to go through that process, and so on. But the first step is going to be you recalculating your impacts and describing what that process is going to look like so that we can all reflect on it fully.
It's of our opinion, the resource area of bank and land underwater, we believe to be, I know the commission decides, but our argument is that it's insignificant. There's no habitat, there's no wildlife or.
It doesn't matter, Ryan. It's still a resource area under the Wetlands Protection Act. We have no authority to change that. Canals are treated differently, but they're not excluded as resource areas.
I mean, yeah, and having not seen it, if it was a concrete bottom, but it was covered with the accumulation of a lot of material over the decades, and it may be serving, or maybe providing some kind of benefit, even if it's, even if it doesn't look good and is junk.
Right. Do you want to take some time to think that through and we can continue?
Sure. Yeah, I'll have to do some more research on that.
Okay. Was there anything else that folks wanted to discuss about the project tonight while we're here, or shall we just put it on hold?
Nothing from me.
All set for now.
Ryan, Mike, anything else you'd like input on tonight?
Not for me right now. I guess I'll try and talk to DEP, and I'm going to look more into the determination of insignificance and see what the procedures are for that, for bank and land underwater.
I mean, if it's over 5,000 square feet, you'd be looking at 401 water quality certification 2, plus removal of material is dredging, over 100 cubic yards. It's dredging. There's a lot of different things involved.
Yeah, you're opening up quite a can of worms with this.
Yep. Army Corps permit 2. Good luck hearing back from them in 2 years or whatever.
Right, and I'd like to research how the dam influences that, and
It doesn't at all.
No.
No. Water rights and all that sort of stuff doesn't really have anything to do with environmental regulation.
Okay.
All right, it sounds like we're ready for a motion then.
I'll make a motion that we continue to August 28th at 6 p.m.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Weeks?
Aye.
Ryan?
Aye.
Buttrick?
Aye.
August?
Aye.
Whittemore?
Aye.
Carr?
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you.
All right, thank you, everyone.
Yeah,
Thank you.
thanks.
All right, our next order of business is a public meeting for a request for determination of applicability filed by Heritage Land Surveying and Engineering on behalf of the Williston Northampton School for existing walkway maintenance off Park Street, map 144, lot 10, request filed on 7/17/2023. Do we have someone here to speak for this item?
Yes, Mark Reed from Heritage Land Surveying and Engineering. Also here tonight is Brian Wing from Williston. I can share the plans for this project. This is a project to do maintenance of an existing sidewalk that crosses the bridge of Upper Williston Pond. And let me get the plan. Up there. Oops. 1 second, please. Where'd my screen go? My sharing is not working. What's going on?
You should be empowered to do so, at least in the meeting. I can also share it. Mark, I have a copy of the plan.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know why it's not. It should come up.
I have you as a co-host, but let me do it real quick. Hold on.
Yeah,
All right.
it says he's a host, so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You never know. Some weird things just glitch out sometimes. There's no explanation.
Yes.
Can folks see what I'm sharing there?
Yes.
Okay, Mark, you want to start with sheet 1 or 2?
Sure. Yeah. Sheet 1's great. So, thank you, Cassie. I'm not sure why mine's not working, but, so this is, the sheet 1 is showing the existing sidewalk, which is located on the southerly side of the pond. And the issue is twofold. One is there's a major tripping hazard as you go from a transition between the bituminous concrete walkway and the concrete surface of the bridge itself. On either side of the bridge, there is currently failure of part of the sidewalk in small areas on either side and erosion from major storm events on either side. So on the south side, we are proposing to install 2 foot wide by 6 foot long concrete retaining walls with a cap. And they're kind of shown in the hatched area on either side. And then saw cutting and removing the existing pavement for a distance of 20 feet. On either side of the outside edge of the retaining wall, there would be riprap proposed, and that all the areas that are disturbed during the construction would be reseeded and maintained. We are proposing silt fence to be installed in the perimeter to ensure that during construction no erosion occurs for it. And if you can zoom in the picture, you can kind of see in the lower corner there, we inserted a picture for you of what we're talking about. You can see how both edges are really rounded. We had a meeting with Hal and Cassie out there. And I know Cassie has a couple pictures, additional pictures, but you can see how over time that asphalt walk has just settled. So that we want to try to reduce the tripping hazard and fix the long-term erosion. And you can see how the grade drops off on either side. On the north side, if you switch to the other plan, similar to that, we are not proposing any of the concrete retaining wall being proposed, but we are going to repave 20 feet of the walkway. But on this side, we feel because the grade is such that we're going to install a 1.5 foot wide, 2 foot deep stone trench. And on which would be the right-hand side of the plan that you're looking at, it would go for 20 feet. And on the left-hand side of this particular plan, there's a steep slope you can see by the contours. It would continue up until where the sidewalk splits. That's shown on the very top section of the plan. In addition, we're going to put riprap and some large boulders, 6 to 12 inches in size, to facilitate slowing down any water that comes down the hill. It's quite a steep slope coming from the building on the upper section, and installing that and adding riprap to that area to stabilize everything. Again, silt fence would be proposed during the construction, and the rest of the walk going up from the 20 feet is fine. There's no issues with that. It doesn't need to be repaved. Again, the upper left-hand corner of the plan kind of shows it, picture of it, a photo of it, coming down the slope. You can kind of see how that, not a great picture, but you can see how the blacktop is failing and there's a tripping hazard to the concrete as it enters the bridge. And I'm sure Cassie has some nice colored pictures too that she could share that would lend itself better to a black and white.
Yeah, I can share those whenever the commission wants.
Mm.
Hey, Mark, did this come before the commission before, or was it just, I remember, I swear, like 10 years ago, I remember like, it maybe was coming up as a problem, but
Right.
it was like something in the future. And now I guess it's the future, or did
Correct.
we permit something?
Correct. We had had an informal discussion with the commission. I don't know, maybe it has been 10 years, Dan, I'm not sure, but yeah, it's finally gotten to more of a forefront
Okay.
to try to fix it. So yes.
Yeah, it may not have been 10, but it was like more than 5.
Yeah.
It's less than 20.
Yeah, right. So it's an ongoing condition that they would like to try to get resolved.
Yep.
So, you know, looking at it, it's not a major project. We are within the buffer zone of the pond on itself, but we feel that we have adequate erosion control and stabilization of the project afterwards. Within the application, we talk about, you know, ongoing maintenance, which I'm sure people know how vigilant Williston is as far as maintaining trash and their areas to keep things clean. One issue that they do have, and that's one of the reasons for the larger stone, is some of the students like to throw rocks into the pond. So we're trying to come up with a way to discourage that by using larger rock.
Mark, bigger rocks just make a bigger splash.
Yeah, right. It might, Dan. Yeah. Other than staking them down, I don't know what else you do.
Up at Ashfield Lake, we painted the bridge over the spillway last year, and then put in like 18-inch riprap, 12 to 18-inch riprap around the spillway instead of modified rock fill. And there are paint chips all over the bridge already from people taking boulders and like leaning them on the railing and then pushing them off.
Oh, jeez. Yep.
Anyway.
Yeah. Well, the office for the campus security, luckily, is right up the top of the hill.
There you go. If they're big enough rocks, they'll take a couple of people like more time to carry them. So then maybe they'll catch them in time.
Yeah.
I don't have too many questions about this one. My only real thought is it would probably be in your benefit, and it would be an improvement from our perspective to add some additional vegetation other than just mowing down to the edge there. Has there been any consideration of adding some shrubs or something on the pond side of your project?
Yes, we've talked about that, and you know, we feel that we could incorporate some plantings within both of those areas. Yes,
that would certainly make it a better project from my perspective. And I think that would work in your favor in terms of holding the slope in place and holding your material in place and preventing erosion long term. Maybe even keeping some of the kids from throwing the rocks in that particular direction.
Okay.
Maybe you could plant some very thorny vegetation. I have a question. I just wondered if it doesn't look like it from the photos, but I just wanted to verify that in the process of removing the current pavement or putting in the troughs to either side, if any trees would be affected or removed.
No, there are no trees. Excuse me. There are no trees to be cut. This area right now is mowed as grass on either side until you get to the rock riprap areas that are highlighted on the plan that are existing. So yeah, there's no trees to cut.
Thank you.
Other questions from the commission?
Are there any other conditions we want to add to the requirement?
I would think the standard 48-hour construction notice. You're showing silt fence, is that correct?
Silt fence.
Yes.
Yeah, silt fence.
Yes.
Yep. Yeah, that looks to be in order. I don't think anything else on my side. What are other standard conditions that I may be forgetting?
The notice and the controls are really the big thing. Really, they're just fine. I just want to clarify. Were you suggesting that you require plantings as part of permit, Julie, or just a recommendation?
The plantings?
Yeah.
If Williston is amenable, I suggest that we write it in as a condition.
If you all can hear me, we would be glad to do something to, improve those areas.
Great, thanks, Brian.
And do you want to know just native plantings or?
Yes, yeah, we would want to note natives. Beyond that, anything that goes in is going to be an improvement in my eyes. So I don't feel the need to specifically see what is proposed unless others do.
Sure.
Thank you. So I've got 48 hours notice, silt fencing installation confirmed at that time, and then plantings they just need to be native, but no requirements for a specific type or number.
Correct. Any other comments?
How long will the project take?
So looking at it, I think it's probably about a week, right, Brian?
I would hope so, Mark.
Yeah,
Obviously, we'd be looking at a weather window to make sure that we're not going to have influence from Mother Nature. And if it's something that we can do before the kids come back, we would certainly like to accomplish that as well. So we eliminate our concerns of foot traffic safety. That's for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you.
Right, if there's no further discussion or comments, do we have a motion?
I'll make a, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say I'll move to issue a negative determination. Type 3, the work described in the request is within buffer zone, but will not alter an area subject to jurisdiction of the act. Therefore, said work does not require the filing of a notice of intent, subject to the following conditions, which are 48-hour notice to be provided and implementation of native plantings in that area. I think that was it.
And the erosion controls already shown, yeah.
Yes. I'll second.
All those in favor, Ryan,
Aye.
Patrick,
Aye.
Whittemore,
Aye.
Weeks,
Aye.
Carr,
Aye.
August.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Okay, well, thank you very much.
Yeah,
Thank
thanks,
you.
everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
And Cassie, I
Thank
assume you'll put that in the mail since City Hall is closed.
Yeah, I'll get it to you out as soon as I can.
Great.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Much appreciated.
All right, moving on to request for certificate of compliance. One Industrial Lofts LLC, 1 Ferry Street, Track 2, Mass DEP file number 151299, Ferry Street Mill Redevelopment Project Map 135, Lot 2. This was the original NOI for that project. Are they still online, Cassie?
Ryan is still here. My guess is that
Okay.
they're going to continue it.
That is my guess as well. Is that, Ryan, what you'd like to do?
Yes, that's correct. That makes sense. Yep.
Okay. Do we have a motion?
A motion to continue to August 28th at 6 p.m.
Second.
All those in favor, Ryan,
Aye.
Buttrick,
Aye.
August,
Aye.
Weeks,
Aye.
Whittemore,
Aye.
Carr.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you. Next is a request for certificate of compliance from Eversource Energy, 19B15/19B16 line right-of-way off North Street, Mass DEP file number 1510320 for upgrades to the utility line map 1. We have someone here for this item?
Yes, hi, Melissa Kaplan from the BSC Group is here. Cassie and I did a site walk. The project looked really good. We submitted our weekly reports. Can I share my screen real quick, Cassie? Yes.
Yeah, you should be able to.
All right, great. So if to remind you, this was the structure replacement off of North Street across from the big substation here. It was a big lattice tower. We came to you guys with a field change to also remove the derelict structure that's adjacent. The work was complete. This is what it looks like now. You can see it. We've got the one single monopole. The other structure was removed, limited tree removal over here on the left, and then the proposed tree removal on the right was completed with as many trees that were possible to remain. Some more close-up shots. This is facing the railroad line, and this one's facing the river. So a couple, as part of the condition of the orders of conditions, if there's any changes that were made, we wanted to make note. We had said that this concrete footer was going to be removed, but I think it was just going to be too difficult. So it was left, which I think would cause more of a mess if it was tried to remove, but they may come back later. I'm not sure, but for now they didn't. The lattice tower, they ended up removing all 4 footers, which provided additional flood storage here, so that's a little different. We did monitor that closely, and because of all the flooding, they did put down a little bit of this clean river stone right here just to help with the erosion of the bank. But everything has revegetated really quickly and really well, and when this was all flooded, it was all super stable, no issues. We looked at it during and after the flooding, and there was no issues. So let me know if you have any questions.
Do you have an update on the compensatory? I can't remember if we actually had compensatory storage here, but I know we had looked at the change in.
So we had calculated the 2 footers. So I can try to bring up that. What did I do with the note? Here it is. Where we talked about it in this invasive monitoring plan, I believe.
When you find what you're looking for, can you please make that larger? It's quite small.
Yes, absolutely. There we go. So with 2 footers, we were looking at around 400. 664 cubic feet. So if you double that, assuming the other footers were similar, you're doubling that. So 600, 1,200 plus cubic feet.
So where does the concrete that you pointed out was left in place play into this?
Oh, that was, so during the field change, we requested that this derelict structure get removed. Let me see, I have a photo. So it was the structure, you can't even see it. It was so thick in that vegetation, so it looked like this. So they just removed the structure. So it wasn't a factor at all. This removal of a structure is under, exempt from the Wetlands Protection Act.
So the concrete underneath it was not part of any of the initial calculations. It was never intended to be removed.
Correct.
Okay.
We had said it might be removed, proposal removal, but we never counted for it or, weren't sure they were actually going to do it, but they never did. They did not. I think it was just going to be too much of an effort.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Other questions from the commission?
This is Sarah. I'm just going off memory here. I haven't gone back and looked at the documents from last year, but I have a memory about something about a pad being put down, a new pad.
It was a temporary constructed matted work pad. That was what I was, let me reshare. Oh, hold on. So it was, one second. Well, that was the original. Let me find the field request. Yeah, here. So it was what is shown in orange. So originally we had proposed yellow and we revised it to orange. So that was what was pretty much installed in the field, was a temporary timber matted work pad, which was removed, and we remonitored it for full restoration.
So was it reseeded underneath or just allowed nature to take its course?
I think it was just nature. Okay. It did really well on its own.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So that call out that says old lattice structure and concrete pad to be removed.
Yeah. Yes.
That's not the structure we were just discussing?
And yes, but the footer was not removed. The foundation, was not removed. So that was not determined into any of the calculations for flood storage. That was just going to be an additional approval that we got separate approval for. What was included in the calculation was, let me see if I can find the photos to show you the original footers. These things right here. These big footers in the front of the photo. So we had said that the back two we weren't including just in case they couldn't remove it just because of where they were located. But they were able to remove it without any environmental issues.
And so the figure you were just showing with the call outs, that was one that was submitted.
Yeah.
But not the one that we approved?
You approved it in a public meeting as a field change.
Yeah, they came for
in this letter
as a minor change to reconfigure the shape of the pad, but then also to include that additional structure.
Yeah, because the removal of the structure and the foundation, if we were to do it, would be considered under the exempt utilities maintenance under 310 CMR 10.022A2.
Okay. Cassie, what do we have? Are all of our conditions met? Do we have continuing conditions on this one?
Hold on a second. Let me pull it up real quick. I have it here.
Yeah. So one item of note on that, there are a couple of perpetual conditions, and we had agreed during the hearing or afterwards, in accordance with the Eversource's continuous vegetation management plan, that this number 55, it was noted that it's being satisfied in, this is the email, and it was approved by the commission, that this is being handled by the Eversource vegetation management plan because they cannot not use vegetation management items in there along their right of way. It's a state approval from the Massachusetts Department of Agriculture. So we got a approval, and it was confirmed that the language does not limit Eversource from applying pesticides, herbicides that are used and covered under Eversource's vegetation management plan are acceptable under this perpetual condition. So we had agreed that we would just record this email with the COC.
Mm-hmm.
So I just wanted to make note of that. But I'll let Cassie answer the question.
Yeah, no, thank you. Thank you for explaining that. Yeah, so
these are I'll pull up the conditions, sorry.
Yeah, that would be helpful. It's pretty standard for what we typically require. So it's the 5 conditions: stabilized slope shall be maintained as designed and constructed by the property owner of record where bioengineered or mechanically stabilized, whether bioengineered or mechanically stabilized slope. Condition 55, which was just explained. Invasive plant species, only non-native invasive plant species according to the Massachusetts Invasive Plant Advisory Group may be planted on site. Seed mixes shall also consist of 100% native non-invasive species. This shall be noted in the strict compliance, ongoing condition. Dumping prohibited. There shall be no dumping of leaves, grass clippings, brush, other debris into wetland resource areas or the 100-foot buffer zone. This condition shall survive the expiration of the order, including in continuing addition in perpetuity on certificate of compliance. And the last one, additional alteration prohibited. There should be no additional alteration of areas under Conservation Commission jurisdiction without the required review and permits. This condition shall survive the expiration order and shall be included in the addition perpetuity of certificate of compliance. So that's conditions 54 through 58.
And do we have a requirement for a stamped as-built plan?
Double checking here.
No, I don't believe so, but I'll let you confirm, Cassie.
Correct.
The condition.
Yeah, it just says a plan. And I know that typically we require as-built. I feel like that must have been part of the discussion when we issued the order itself. I'd have to go back to the minutes to look at that, but I know it would most likely be a deliberate change to the order to take from our boilerplate. But yeah, it does just say a plan showing post-construction conditions.
Okay. And am I remembering correctly that we had agreed upon some invasives management as part of this project?
We had a plan, and the plan details the use of the Eversources during a plan during construction, and then post-construction would be maintained as part of Eversource's yearly and 5-year vegetation management plans.
Okay, thank you. I couldn't remember where we landed.
Yeah.
All right, I have no further questions.
I'm going to go back to this just in case someone else has questions regarding it.
No questions for me.
No
I'm
question.
good.
No questions.
All right, I think that's everyone. Do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion that we issue a CFC for Eversource Energy.
Second.
Second.
All those in favor? Ryan?
Aye.
Patrick?
Aye.
Weeks?
Aye.
August?
Aye.
Carr?
Aye.
Whittemore?
Aye.
Did I get everybody? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you. You have a good night.
Thanks.
Thank you.
The next item with someone in attendance, if we can take out of order, would be item 6E. It would be Loudville, 6973 Loudville Housing Development.
All right, do we have a motion to take 6E out of order?
Motion to take 6E out of order.
Second?
All those in favor? Ryan,
Aye.
Buttrick,
Aye.
August,
Aye.
Whittemore,
Aye.
Weeks,
Aye.
Carr,
Aye.
Ryan.
Aye.
Motion carries. 6E is an enforcement action at Loudville Condominiums LLC, 6973 Loudville Road, map 140/139, lot 28 and 29/11. This is enforcement order 2023-001. Cassie, do you want to give us an update?
Yeah, and I believe Ryan is here to speak to this item as well, Ryan Nelson. So just the update, let's see. I went out to the site on July 27th. And when I got there, they were part of the way through installing the slope restoration work, which included the fabric wrap soil lifts. When I saw it, I felt that it wasn't being completed correctly, and talked to the contractor about it and the folks with Arlebeck Associates, and met with Ryan on site, which was helpful. Let's see, but they disagreed with my assessment. I so reached out to the chair and asked her about it. She also seemed, and correct me if I'm wrong, Julie, but you seem to agree with me that it didn't seem like that was being done in a satisfactory way. And I can read these emails that went back and forth if that's helpful for the commission, but essentially the concern is that the restoration work is not completed in the correct way. My focus was that the soil lifts themselves are not wrapping each lift in a way in which the face end of it, like the front facing end, is tight and taut so that it creates a firm lift. And then also I was concerned that one continuous piece of fabric was being used to create each lift, though I got an email from Carlos that wasn't the case. And Ryan, I don't know if you remember when you were on site, it seems that, I can't remember his name, but that gentleman who was working on it had said that they were using a continuous piece. So I don't know if you want to provide further clarity on that too. But I guess I wanted to ask the commission, do you want me to read both these messages in their entirety, if that's helpful?
I don't think that's necessary, unless there's anyone that wants to hear them.
I provided them to the commission in that ongoing projects update document too. So you guys have a copy.
Right.
But I guess, Ryan, I don't know if there's anything you want to add or
Sure.
provide your perspective.
Yep. So I was out there that day. Cassie did the inspection. Carlos, who is the contractor working out there, was maybe a little more than halfway done working up the slope. And we found out there was some concern from the commission about install. So they ceased work, just waiting for some further guidance as to, what the commission wanted to see specifically, so that if Carlos did have to redo what was already installed, he could do it correctly and finish it once and for all, and just try and minimize the amount of effort needed. So no further work had been done since that date, and we're just wanted to hear from the commission, what exactly it is, just to get a clear orders of, if Carlos is to repair what was already installed, what you guys are looking for, so that we can appease everyone.
Right. So I know that Commissioner Buttrick and I both looked at the photos. I don't believe either of us have been on site to look at the installation in person, but it was clear from the photos that what was being constructed is not what we were expecting. We both have experience with soil encapsulated lifts, and they do not look like what is being constructed. We don't feel that what you are constructing matches the detail that you provided either, which we approved because it does in fact look like what we expect of soil encapsulated lifts. And I distinctly recall having a conversation when we approved that we asked who would be doing the install and if they had experience with this technique. And we were told that no, that you did not have experience, or the contractor did not have experience, but they wished to proceed with doing it themselves. So that seems to be what we've arrived at, that the folks doing the work are not familiar with what this technique entails or how it should be implemented, and so it's not being done correctly. and we need to see it done correctly. And I think there are a couple of options to get to that point. One is that the contractor or their consultants need to do some research into how this technique is implemented and proceed again. Or the other option would be for us to select a contractor with known experience, and we could get a quote to have it done by a third party and proceed that way. Do other commissioners have comments?
Do we want to look at the pictures, and maybe if Ryan, maybe if I'm sorry, maybe Ryan and I are talking over each other, or maybe I'm getting feedback. But if we can look at the photos and what we're looking at described, I don't know, maybe even if it doesn't look like what we were expecting, would it function okay? I guess I don't have information to that extent now. Like if the fabric is embedded back into the slope, it's some, and it's in kind of in layers, then maybe, even though maybe if it doesn't look like we're expecting, maybe it's good enough for what's in there so far. I don't know. All I've seen is like a couple of pictures, I think.
Sure, I can share some, and that's kind of the direction we were coming from. The contractor is does he need to redo what he's already done, or is what he's already done sufficient, or just to what level of repair he needs to make? So let me pull those photos up.
And Ryan, if it or commission members, it may be possible that I have more pictures. I don't know what the pictures you got were, but
yeah, Cassie, go ahead if you want to share it. It says I'm not enabled right now, so go ahead.
Okay, that's interesting. I will make sure I have you still listed as a meeting host. So, and if you're talking, it means you should have permissions, but I will go ahead and do it. Okay, hopefully y'all should be able to see it now. Okay, so majority of the photos are taken from the top of the slope. And let's see. Let me see if we can get a good one from this side. That's looking down below where the work was. Okay, looking back up. I think this was about the time. I came back twice. When I came back the second time, this upper area was covered, just kind of to make sure everything was covered before they stopped.
So what are we looking at here? I mean, clearly it's an erosion control blanket, but how is the soil integrated with that, and how does the fabric staked in or whatever?
Yep, each of those segments you're seeing are the individual lifts, and they were tied back with fabric back to the limit of excavation, and they were pinned and stapled in place. I think there's just some scraggly, overlap on the surface that's not very taut. So some of these, especially it looks like on the sides where they tried tying in, maybe they didn't cut the fabric and they just kind of folded it and piled it on itself. I'm not entirely sure, but it seems to be the edges were the areas that looked, I don't have the right word, but less presentable or possibly incorrect. But the section in the middle, it seemed like they had the right idea.
I beg to differ. None of it looks like the right idea from what I can see in the photos, Ryan.
Can I point at the screen, Cassie? Is that possible
Sorry, I don't think you can.
So, all right. So
if you were just trying, Dan, I think somebody's cursor was just on the screen.
That's me.
Oh, that's Cassie. Okay.
Yeah. All right. So Cassie, bring your cursor down there. a little bit. Yeah, right there. So that layer. So we're looking at like a fold in the fabric, and it sounds like there might be soil like within that fold. And so like, is there a top layer and a bottom layer with soil in between? And how is that, how far back does the fabric go beyond what we're looking at? So, I mean, the detail had like relatively horizontal layers with the fabric going underneath each layer a certain distance and being staked back and then kind of wrapping up and around.
Right. Yeah, so there is a top and bottom that's folded back.
Yep.
How far? I don't know. I wasn't there. Maybe I think Cassie's first picture kind of showed the limit of over excavation.
Let's see. This is like before they stopped, I think, or right when I was stopping, maybe. And it shows how far it's going back.
So that's so this looks like a bottom layer that's being prepared here.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay.
I'm not in any way an expert on soil lists, but I had the impression from what we discussed and what was detailed in the plan to use a very poor, probably metaphor, that these would be much more like taquitos and much less like quesadillas. That they would be like the soil, like the fabric would be rolled around, the soil would be encased in the fabric, and that it would be like really distinct layers. And when I look online, when I Google what they look like in images, that's how they all look. So these look like they have very thin amounts of soil in each layer that's not completely wrapped. Like it's just sort of folded over and then another layer is put on top of it. So I don't know if that's useful or not, Ryan, but that's kind of, as somebody who doesn't have expertise in this area, that's what it looks like to me as part of the problem.
Yeah, no, I agree. The surface doesn't look aesthetic. It doesn't look like the detail. But we're just trying to get a direction from the commission. If you guys feel we need to redo this, we will. Or if what was put in is sufficient for this application.
I wasn't so concerned about aesthetics. I just think the aesthetics speak to the function of the lift.
Mm-hmm.
I don't see that this is actually going to do the job.
Shouldn't this be uniformed and tightly wound and layered? It's sort of haphazard, and then you have rebar in there. Don't you have to have the wooden stakes? Because then you're going to have to put it in the live plantings.
Yeah, I think the rebar was just temporary as they were working, but.
The other question that I have, and I don't know if Dan may have more experience, but this is not the type of fabric that is typically used with encapsulated lifts. It's usually a more
like
a more kind of
core, right,
heavier core fabric.
Yep.
I don't know if this is appropriate in that instance or an approved use for encapsulated lifts or not. Dan, do you know? This is not what I was expecting.
They had on the drawing, there was a fabric described. I don't have the drawing in front of me right this second, but there was a fabric described in the manufacturer.
Yep. So
and presumably it was this one, but we are not the engineer responsible for knowing whether this is the appropriate whether they've selected the appropriate fabric for the use. We just requested that it last at least 2 years.
Yeah, I think I don't remember if we talked about it or if I was just going through it in my mind that there's really FES lifts a lot of times are done with core fabric, which is like super thick and resilient, and it stands up to like quite a bit of river velocity if you've got that, but we don't really have that here. We're just trying to keep the slope stable enough to let other things take over stabilization wise. And so we talked about having like a 2-year biodegradable fabric, which I don't know, this could be, I guess.
Right, that was my recollection as well, and I was told by Carlos that they did buy what was on the plan, which is a biodegradable erosion control fabric. And I think the core blankets are more durable and probably would get that better tautness and firm lifts like we were intending, but I don't have a lot of post monitoring experience. I don't know how well those vegetate if we were to seed underneath like we have in this instance, aside from the tubing plantings that were proposed to be staked in.
Yeah, so I guess I wasn't going to comment on the fabric myself. My questions were, with FES lifts, it's nice to have those flat, you have the flat like foot or two in between the layers so that water kind of falls and has a chance to like soak in a little bit instead of running down the slope uninterrupted. And then I guess I wasn't sure. I mean, it looks like they were trying real hard to tie this into the undisturbed bank in this photo, the left side, which is good, but I'm just wondering what they were doing on the right side also.
I think on the left side, you're seeing the angle of the slope changes. It's not like a parallel slope. There's an angle point kind of, and it sloped back the other direction, kind of towards the brook slightly. So I think they're kind of, round that, so to speak. Whereas where the guy's standing on the right, it was more kind of linear. But yeah, it looks like they didn't finish tying in on the right-hand side.
How far up the slope did they get? Like, how many vertical feet and how many are left to go?
Let me check my pictures. They got looked like they did 6 lifts with maybe 4 or 5 more to go.
Well, that would suggest that there was only 10 feet of elevation to make up, and didn't we have more like 20?
I mean, if they're, I get with a normal lift, it's easy. It's kind of easy to measure up. Like a lift is a foot high, say, and then it's 2 feet from the face of the lift, and the horizontal parts are level. So it's kind of easy to measure up, like how you're stepping up, because there literally are stairs. But here, if it's a sloped, if the top part of the lift is sloped instead of flat, I guess it's harder to judge how far just by counting lifts. I mean, I guess my opinion is if the fabric is lapped back into underneath with some soil on it, then that is helping with one of the goals, which is to keep water from flowing down underneath the fabric and eroding out without without creating an erosion gully that you never even see because there's erosion control blanket standing over that. That happens all the time. With just blanketing a slope. So, but I guess I don't know. I don't know if I really see the need to go to the town to redo it, but it would be nice to get some level tops on the rest of the lips to help water kind of like soak in.
But if the soil isn't compacted and wrapped tightly within that fabric, you're still going to get preferential drainage paths in and under the fabric, don't you think, Dan? That's just going to exacerbate things. Like it's going to want to follow all of those little wrinkles and divots.
Maybe. I don't know.
How are they compacting the soil as they build each lift?
I think Cassie was out there. I wasn't when they were doing it, but it looked like based on the pictures, they had a small plate compactor, jumping jack. They were lifting down there with a excavator. Yeah, right there.
Yeah, it looked like that's what it was when I went out there. This was from when I went out the first time that day and returned back, but I didn't see it in use. It was, I thought that was on there too.
And in that picture, it looks like they're only going back a couple feet into the slope. Is that an accurate representation of what's happening?
It's hard for me to say. I mean, I'm inclined to agree with you. Yeah, it's hard for me. I didn't like while I was there. I was more concerned about the face of each at that stage, but I definitely wasn't there to see how far back each layer went.
I would be concerned that if they don't redo it, like I totally get why Carlos doesn't want to redo it, because there's been a lot of redoing on this project, and he spent a lot of money, but my concern is actually that those won't work, and that then the soil will erode, and then he'll have to actually redo the whole thing anyway, and it will even be more expensive and more of a project down the road if they don't do it the right way now. That's just my very humble opinion.
I have the same concern.
I do too.
I can go out there tomorrow and take a closer look at it. Try to make a judgment. But in my notes here, I had that the list should be 6 to 12 inches high, and that picture did not look like it was 3 inches. So,
right.
And I'm looking at the elevations. There's got to be at least that whole side of the erosion is at least 20 feet.
Right. We settled on this approach because we felt it was the best thing to stabilize the slope long term and avoid future problems. And I just don't feel like we have evidence that it's being implemented correctly so far. And if we continue to build further up from this, I think we may just have more trouble in the long term, as Sarah suggested, and it would be better to correct it before they continue and do it right from the bottom up.
How long has this been going on since the original violation?
I don't remember the exact date, but original violation of washout was what, sometime in early June, maybe?
Let me double check. I should be in this.
Like March.
I think it was in the spring.
It
was before anything was coming up plant-wise.
The first violation pictures that I have are from March 23rd.
Oh, okay.
Or excuse me, March 22nd.
So we're into 6 months. We still have to have the soil of the slope done and the plantings, and we still have to do the in-stream mitigation. So I'm concerned that we're going to keep going and then we're going to hit winter. And I don't believe they can do that once the seasons change. If that's correct.
But I think if they got the soil lifts redone within the next couple weeks and then planted, that gives like a good 2 months of regrowth time, vegetation time before we get into frost and winter.
I agree. They should be able to grow all through September.
Yeah, so Carlos is looking to resume this, as soon as we get a direction. It's his intent to get everything stabilized and planted ASAP. So we're happy to comply. We just want to make sure we're doing it correctly.
We've had a bunch of multiple inch storm events this summer since this got going, right? And we haven't really seen evidence of erosion in this particular area of the washout resulting from those events, have we?
No, so I've been doing more than weekly SWIP inspections with all the rain, and there's been no erosion of this area.
So I guess the question for the commission is, 1, do you or do you not want it redone? 2, if you do want it redone, are you ready to have the applicant redo it, maybe with a different fabric or different explicit criteria in terms of how those lifts should look, or hire a third party to do the work, which I would just note it would take a little bit of time to set that up. Just something for consideration.
Well, my vote, and this is truly coming out of both concern for the slope and out of concern for Carlos's pocket, is that they redo them. I'm sorry to say that. I have a lot of empathy for the position of the builder, but I really think it's not going to work and he's going to end up redoing them. That's my vote.
Do others have thoughts?
Well, it has to be redone. So whether it's Carlos or a third party, then a third party, as Cassie said, would take longer to put that together. So either way, I think it has to be redone. Different fabric. How does it get monitored? And do we put a time frame on it? Because if it gets redone at the contractor and it isn't up to our specifications, then what?
Well, it's not being done now the way the drawing shows it to be done. The dimensions that are on this drawing here are not really being followed.
Is the contractor capable of doing the work that we think should be done?
I would think so. it's pretty clear on this drawing that the lift should be, maybe up to 12 inches high and then should be flipped over and then 3 inches of soil put on before the next lift is put on the top of that one. So
Maybe the commission could require monitoring during the work, either from a third party or by Ryan, because it sounds like, Ryan, you weren't there when they were doing the work, if I remember correctly, when I was there. I don't know if you were there for part of it before I got there. Don't know if that'd be sufficient.
Yeah, I wasn't there, but believe us, I will be there the day they're working on it so that we get this right.
Ryan, are you comfortable with what the detail is meant to entail and what a typical soil encapsulated lift? Yes. Okay.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah. Dan makes a valid point that we haven't seen a problem yet, but if they're built to detail, they should withstand whatever comes along. If we don't build them to detail now, they're just going to have to come back and deal with the problem later. So I would rather see it built to detail so that we can all feel more confident that it's going to hold up. I think that's going to be in all of our best interest in the long run. So that would be my recommendation, is to redo them, make sure that they're built to the detail, which was approved and which is a standard installation, and go from there. And if Ryan and Carlos are comfortable doing that on their own, I'm happy to allow it to proceed that way.
I'm good with that.
That sounds appropriate to me.
I'm curious if I don't know, when the Mount Tom Ave project was done, when I look at the photos from the Mount Tom Ave thing, I don't know if those were actual soil lifts or not, but they're certainly more what I think are soil lifts, and I wonder if we could give them those photos as examples of what we're talking about, if they are.
I mean, as others have stated, there's ample examples that you can find online of what this installation looks like. I trust that Ryan knows what it's supposed to be. And there's plenty of information online about how they're built and how they function.
And Sarah, I had the same thought, because I shared those with, I don't know if I sent it to you, Ryan, but I certainly shared it with Carlos, the image of the soil lifts that I have from that site, as an example when I was talking to him on site.
Yeah, I am aware of those. I think in this instance, the benches or the terracing can't be too pronounced because we're trying to keep up with a relatively steep grade, but I know what we all are looking for, so I'll relay that to Carlos.
All right, any further discussion?
Just so that it's clear on my end, the commission is looking for it to be matched the design, certainly closer, probably a different fabric that can withstand that kind of creating that tighter surface in face of each lift section. And then the lift should be horizontal and not like sloping back at all. Like they should be totally flat. And then the height of each lift should be consistent with what's on the plan. Does that sound correct, everybody? Of those specific concerns?
I think so.
Yes.
Does that make sense to you, Ryan?
Yes, and we'll let you know when we anticipate to start. And I don't know if Cassie, you want to be there or at least check in on that day, just to confirm with everyone.
Yeah, I'd like to be there. So yeah, just let me know when you're going to do it. Sooner the better, obviously. And then I'll probably plan to be there just to see like the first one or two, so I don't get there halfway if there's an issue. So I'll probably plan to be there near the beginning.
Okay, sounds good.
Thank you.
All right, thanks everyone. We'll keep you updated.
Thank you.
All right, good night.
All right, returning to order, Cassie, are there any other enforcement actions to discuss?
Quick thing, I'm just item C, 476 East Street. I reached out to them. I haven't heard back yet. And I just want to set up a day to meet with the owner and do a site visit to make sure that they're clear what's required. So hopefully for the next meeting, I'll have that. Also, I'm sorry, I have to go grab a new notebook. I finished this one while I was writing this next. So
Okay.
But I'll be right back.
You know the meeting's gone too long when.
You've run out of paper.
Okay, sorry about that.
No problem.
Good to go. New notebook.
That was the only enforcement issue.
Yeah, that's the only one I have an update for. Everything else is kind of going as planned. I'll have more substantive updates for some of the others at the next meeting.
Great. Any updates on Echo Dale West?
Yes. So I talked to Jessica Applin from Land Stewardship Inc. and told her about how we weren't able to get the mowing done reasonably because it was just too wet. The conditions were never right to get it done by August 1st. And she said that's okay. It just results in a shift in the treatment plan, in that it likely wouldn't make sense to try to do a treatment this season because it'd be harder to target those specific, regrowth of invasives because they're probably tiny, but they're also probably swamped in all the other natural vegetation that's come up over the summer. And so her recommendation was to, if we can, mow it again in this season. That's great. In the fall, go for it. But we won't do another treatment until spring of the targeted herbicide treatment.
Okay.
And
That should be doable.
Yeah. So to make sure that made sense to everybody. Let's see.
Mm-hmm.
There we go. And I think that was all I had to say about it. Yeah. Yep.
Great. Okay. Compliance updates for active projects. Which ones do we need to discuss?
Okay. Just a heads up that 100 Bassett Brook Drive, the Lake Invasives project, they're going to be coming next meeting to talk about a CPA request they're going to do and hopefully look at the commission's maybe a letter of support for that.
Okay.
But I'll wait to give more details. 50 Florence Road. There, you weren't here. Some of you weren't here for last meeting. That there was some kind of issue with the erosion controls in one location where there was a breach because water is kind of accumulating in this one place. And
sorry, Cassie, which one is this?
Sorry, this is 50 Florence Road, item Q on compliance updates. It's for the large scale.
Oh, the solar. Yep.
Yes. They fixed that. It resulted in some sediment going into the 100-foot buffer zone, but not into any of the stream areas. But the 100-foot buffer zone immediately outside of the controls, that was cleaned up. The controls were beefed up. They did everything they needed to do. Then they got another wicked rainstorm, and it failed again, surprisingly. So they went out there and cleaned it all up again. And I just need to go out again and see it. They're coming for a long-term solution to this issue of water gathering in this area, in that there was an incorrect grading within a limited disturbance, and it's not directing the water to this larger field area that's outside of the buffer zone as was it supposed to do. So they're going to be coming with a change request related to that, and I've made them well aware that they need to explain all what they're going to do. But for the interim, they just need to keep beefing up the controls there. I need to go out to the site again, really, to see, confirm what they've sent me this far in terms of the reporting, to make sure it's good. But
what's the status of construction on that project?
It's almost entirely complete. The site is pretty much entirely stabilized, but there's this area that's washing away near the pad, near battery pad, that, around that area, there was kind of like a dirt, gravelly road leading up to it. And because of this accumulated water, it was washing along the front of the pad and moving it all towards this erosion control. So everywhere else on site is entirely vegetated, and we haven't been having issues. But in that one spot, it's not orienting correctly in terms of that sheet flowing of the stormwater, I guess.
And it sounds like it's because it wasn't graded according to the plans.
That's my understanding, yes.
Okay. All right. Anything else?
Not for 50 Florence. So the other one was 96 East Street. So at the last meeting, City Planner Bag had come and talked about some changes that they wanted to make to the stormwater system. 96 East Street was the accessible trail leading up to Mount Tom. There's no jurisdictional areas for wetlands there, but the commission issued the stormwater permit for the site. So Jeff wasn't able to get me updated information, and then he was on vacation this week. So next meeting, I plan to get a more formal update about what's going on site and what was done. The concern was that the work that they were proposing already was completed and didn't come before the commission before they did it. So wanted to show, I've been to the site since then and taken pictures and stuff. Looks so far so good. Haven't been any issues. The biggest thing for those who were in the last meeting was that they installed like this perforated pipe to try to direct water away from this point where it was causing this kind of flow down a slope. And it looks like that's working fine. I haven't noticed any like erosion from that area or anything like that, but I kind of think we should just wait till the next meeting to talk to Jeff about it, so we can get a clearer picture of where everything stands, if that works with the commission.
Sounds good.
Okay. And that's the last thing. So the next thing, I didn't finish the minutes. Apologize for that. And the next general business item was 359 Main Street for possible violation. A resident came forward to me about this, in that there has been use of herbicides and pesticides. 359 Main Street is a big housing development that was done back in 2004, I think. 2006.
Where is this?
It's, I might be able to just show you on a map if that's more helpful.
Yeah.
Let me pull it up on Mass Mapper. And it's one of the sites where,
can't picture how to
I know, yeah. Hold on just a second. Here we go. Okay. And I apologize, I wasn't able to get all of the original plans scanned because I needed a large format scanner and the building was locked. Or the person whose office it is in, I wasn't able to coordinate with them to get it scanned. But hopefully for the next meeting, I should have that available. But let me share my screen here so you can see where this is.
That's the Hamptons, huh?
I think so, yeah. Yeah, so you can see Dunay Street and South Street that crosses over. This is the neighborhood.
Mm-hmm.
And it does not immediately apparent from the data on Mass Mapper. Even if I turned on all the layers, it wouldn't be apparent, but there are mapped from the filing from 2004, early 2000s, that there are wetlands and BBW that encroaches on the areas of some of these streets and some of these houses, particularly along this portion of the property here. And so there, this project was closed out. It got a certificate of compliance. There was past pretty significant enforcement that was pursued by the city and the state. It was confirmed to be resolved, unrelated to this herbicide issue. So one of the ongoing conditions of the certificate of compliance is that herbicides and pesticides should not be used within the 100-foot buffer zone. And this resident was informing me that it seems like that was taking place. So maybe the best thing would be to look at those conditions if folks want to. And the resident's actually here. I know it's been a wicked long meeting, Mary. If you want to give any of your perspective, if the commission's okay with it,
sure.
I would recommend you do so, but I will find the order of conditions just so I can share that with you. Let's see here. Pull up the right thing.
Do you have to unmute Mary?
Oh, you know what? Because she's on the co-host. Sorry, hold on just a second, Mary. I apologize. I forgot about that. You can go now. If you want to, you should be able to unmute yourself. I'll pull this up. Okay. All right, so the certificate of compliance, notes, conditions, 20, 30, 41, 49, 51, 52, 57, 60, 62, and 63 are ongoing conditions. And in the order, those conditions were, I think the main one was 63. Here we go, 52. Condition 52, there shall be no application of fertilizers or pesticides to the lawns or gardens in the buffer zone or any areas contributing runoff to the wetland or pond. Such a stipulation will be placed into the property deed to run with the property in perpetuity. And the resident was also able to give me a list of likely chemicals being used. And so I guess the question, and I will read those here in a second, but the question really is just if the commission agrees this violation, and then I would reach out normal procedures to do so. The use of, I'm just going to share my screen here so you can read these. And she was able to share me the, is it called MSDS? Like the sheets, the labels. But I guess I recommend the next steps would be for me to reach out to the condominium like president, the association, because I don't know that it's the way Mary was describing it. There isn't an explicit like one owner anymore for the whole property, and so I reach out to them and confirm what's being used and where, and then either if the commission thinks it's right, make a recommendation to not do it anymore, or I'm going to come to the next meeting to talk about what alternatives could be done or anything like that.
Yeah, Cassie, I think that makes sense. If it's a condominium association, most likely they're responsible for whatever lawn maintenance is being done, and they probably have a single contract for the association. So if you could send something to them, note that there's been a concern that they may be in violation of their order for this reason. And then, as you said, ask what they're using and for them to come and please discuss with us at the next meeting.
Okay. We can do that. Okay. Does anyone have any other questions before?
I'm in a butter. I wonder if that means that I shouldn't participate. It probably does, but I don't have any like opinion one way or another resulting from me being in a butter. Probably be better if I didn't, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, if you're asking my opinion, I would say recuse yourself just to be safe. But
yep.
Thanks,
right, we'll see what we get into, and if it's, I don't know. I'll think about it. I probably would recuse myself if there was a vote or something, I guess.
Okay. Okay.
All right. Anything else, Cassie?
No, just the wetlands ordinance update is that the next working group will be September 5th is what I have scheduled.
Great. All right. I think that's everything. Any other new business?
Not for me.
All right. In that case, can we get a motion?
Motion to adjourn.
Second? Do we have a second?
We're having so much fun. I'll second.
Thank you. All in favor, Buttrick,
Aye.
Ryan,
Aye.
Weeks,
Aye.
Whittemore,
Aye.
August,
Aye.
Carr.
Aye.
Motion carries. It is 8:53, and we are concluding this meeting of the Easthampton Conservation Commission. Our next meeting will be August 28th. Thank you, everyone.
This government meeting is brought to you by Eastworks and our local cable subscribers.